This does not go in the fucking final podcast.
All right. Well, with that said, welcome back to the second episode of the Ayoub podcast. And I believe we've selected a topic.
Yeah.
And you have...
This way we didn't...
Yeah.
We don't commit the mistake of
book club.
Phil and Mark's book club.
Yeah. So this is a topic that I have suggested, and then you decided that you wanted to talk about a lot. So run with it. You go. You do the thing. Say words to the people.
All right. So the topic was rights.
Yes.
What are they?
Mm-hmm.
Do they exist? Do we have them? And the first question I wanted to ask you, but I thought was actually better served asking it on the podcast, is are we talking about human rights, civil rights, or both?
Well, I think we're just talking about rights, right? So
Okay.
so we have there are various definitions and there are various types of rights. Okay.
I kind of want to get my cell phone ready so I can Google definitions.
Google shit.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no. I want to be totally unprepared. I want to make sure that our audience knows that we have no actual knowledge and anything that comes out of our mouths is just asshole opinion.
Oh yeah, but I like to win arguments, so I want Google to back me up on shit. That's why I have it ready.
Do you expect we're going to argue?
I actually expect that we're going to have differing opinions.
Okay, that's fair.
We might not argue, but
Okay.
we're definitely going to have different opinions on this.
And also, do you see it reasonable to be able to reference the internet during an argument such that you may win it without actual knowledge?
Say that part again?
Do you see it reasonable to reference the internet during an argument such that you may win it without actual knowledge?
If there's a specific point of contention where I'm 95% sure that what I'm saying is correct, and you're no, that's wrong, I want to have...
Okay. So
Siri.
I would like to suggest that you come to these debates
Siri
more prepared from now on. Okay.
All right.
So I actually do want to go back to the original text message that I sent you. What are they? This was my suggestion. What are they?
Mm-hmm.
Where do they come from? And do we have them? Okay. So there are multiple definitions to the term rights, and there are like you said, civil rights. There's natural rights, whatever the hell that means. There's rights not imposed, but rights provided by society. There's rights that we decide that we want or don't want, right? So there's a whole kind of spectrum. I sort of fall back on where do these even come from? If we didn't make them up, then from where do they come?
Okay.
Right? So that's kind of the question of, where do they even come from? Right. So, yeah.
So you want me to... I guess we'll start there. I think they come from us. I think all rights are, a right is as real as an idea. Are ideas real? Are thoughts real? Mm-hmm. Rights are thoughts that we all agree on, and we've created systems around those thoughts. Those systems certainly have tangible manifestations in the real world, but and you might say that something that you can touch or feel or interact with is real, but rights conceptually are exactly that. They're just a thought that we all had that we're like, ooh, I like that thought. Yeah, that's a good thought.
Let's all do that one.
Yeah, let's all keep that thought.
So,
well, see, that's the thing. There is no doing of that thought. The thought is not you can act out the consequences of a right, but the right itself is not for example, right? Let's take the lowest hanging fruit we've got here, Declaration of Independence, right?
Sure.
Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
Which is based off of John Locke's Life, Liberty, and Property.
Sure.
Right? The right to life. How do you do that one? What is the doing of that?
Is the right to life in the Declaration of Independence?
They are God-given rights granted to us. They're unalienable rights granted to us by our
For
Creator,
the
right?
life, liberty, and the pursuit of
In
happiness.
the course of human events,
but
there comes.
however, just because if we're sticking to the government,
God, I really hope I'm quoting from the same.
no, you're
Same thing.
Careful what you quote from, yeah. But if we're sticking to the United States government and the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Independence is not. It's not a document of law.
No.
It's a neat set of words that we like, but the rights.
But the basis, right? The basis for the principles of our government, right? The subsequent constitution that we have and the things like that are founded indirectly or maybe directly off of a principle that is espoused in the Declaration of Independence, which is there are 3 unalienable, supposedly God-given rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the reason I'm using them as an example is just to say, to your point about whether or not they are real, right? When you talk about doing a right or enacting a right, the right in and of itself, like, how do you enact the right to life? It's just an idea. It's just an idea,
right?
Of,
but okay, so what you've laid out there are these supposedly natural rights. Okay, let's just call them natural rights, and let's forget God-given, because fuck God. But the law
alienating 50% of our users.
No, I mean, it's less than that, actually. Quite thankfully, I think we're at a point now where we're like slightly less than half of humanity believe in nonsense. Slightly less, not totally.
I kind of want to digress for a second here and ask you: Do you not believe in God?
I do not. Believe. I thought we've established. Oh, are we doing this for the show?
Oh no, I mean maybe we had a personal discussion. I guess my memory.
Yes, no, I don't believe in wizards and fucking Santa Claus or gods or superpowers.
All right. So, do you not believe in the canonical, religiously established conception of God, like old white man sitting on a beard?
Certainly that goes out the window.
The concept of a supreme conscious entity that deliberately set in motion the events of the universe.
I am in no better place than any other human who has ever existed to determine whether or not that shit is real or not.
Well, I'm not asking you to determine if it's real.
And so my view of it is that it is highly unlikely that such a thing exists, but if it does, cool.
Okay.
Like,
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
I have set myself as an atheist who is happy to be convinced that there is a sky creature that is pulling strings.
Sure. Atheism is not an aversion to deity. It's just a non-belief in it. It's not like if it comes into... It's not like if you proved that it existed, all of a sudden you'd be like, that sucks. You're like, no, why would I? That's good for God.
No, it'd be neat.
Glad he's here.
It'd sure be neat to know other things. But no, I do not believe in such things at all. I think that the natural world is sufficiently extraordinary without the need for a supernatural. And if the natural world were set into motion by some form of supernatural, then okay, cool. But probably not, because the way things work seem to indicate otherwise.
The distinction that you're creating is an important one, because you prefer the term natural rights versus God-given.
Yeah, I think it's a more clear term.
Well, actually, I would say it's not.
Oh.
In this particular context, right? Where we are discussing what human beings believe are fundamental, or at least American human beings believe are fundamentally owed to them, right?
American human beings.
The source of that belief is relevant, right? Because the people who came up with that, and most of the individuals who agree with that idea that there's these 3 rights, right, don't think that they are the result of like random evolution of the universe.
That's not necessarily clear. There's good evidence historically to suggest that those humans didn't necessarily believe in a divine creator. Some of them did, and some of them didn't necessarily. So I would argue that whether or not...
Well, the ones who wrote that document sure as shit did.
Well, no, not necessarily. So, but let's take it from a different perspective.
Wait.
Hold on a second.
The language literally says endowed by their creator.
Yeah, I understand, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily believed that it was a divinely inspired thing. There's
All right.
there's all
Walk
sorts
me
of
through
writings.
this.
There's all sorts of writings from the founders to suggest that not all of them were Christians and not all of them were believers in a God. But that's kind of neither here nor there, because quite frankly, if it's a natural right, it's a God-given right. We call it what we like. If it's something that exists, period, it's natural.
Well, one implies that it is owed to us by
but
an external supreme entity that is absolutely right.
okay, but let's so let's just do it this way then. The laws of nature are an external supreme entity that are absolutely right. Gravity's going to gravity. There's nothing we can do about it. Fuck off. Have a nice day.
As a guy who loves science,
you think we can skirt the laws of nature?
oh yeah, I think we can. I think we can manipulate.
Oh, sure.
I think understanding the laws of nature allows. Eventually, not in my lifetime or my children's or grandchildren's, we'll get anti-gravity boots.
Okay, but we're not.
Right?
But we're okay. Fine. So let's just say anti-gravity boots are going to arrive at some point in the future. We didn't turn off gravity. We we didn't turn off. We simply countered it. Unless you want to get down deep into the fucking quantum understanding of mass and
right. Like,
but no.
At what point do you become so familiar or so comprehensive in your understanding of a given law that you can then rewrite it or subvert it or do any number of things?
At the point where it doesn't matter for the purposes of this discussion. Okay. So the Declaration of Independence outlines an idea that we have some form of rights that are given to us by a thing. Whether it's nature or a god or some fucking thing in between.
Right.
But none of those things are laws, according to the United States government, according to the United States Constitution, because we're going to just ignore all other religions and all other governments for the purposes of this thought. The Constitution of the United States says nothing about the right to life. Doesn't exist. The right to liberty doesn't exist, and there's certainly no right to happiness.
Okay, but wait a second. The purpose of the Constitution is not to define so much. I know there's the Bill of Rights, but the entire structure, right? Even the Bill of Rights, right, is written in the negative, not the positive, right? It's like the government does not have the right to take away X, Y, and Z.
So
it is not that the right. So that's kind of how it's formulated.
Sure, but forget like theoretical, hypothetical, what rights might mean for a moment. Let's just look at the law. Okay. The law does not give us any rights to life. It does not give us any rights to liberty or happiness.
Sure.
All it does, like you said, is
those things are implied by the opposites. Because there are laws against murder, right? So the law against murder is not a law that says everyone must live.
The law against murder is not a right. There's no right implied within the law that says you. It doesn't even say you can't murder. It says if you murder, jail.
Well, okay, that's another topic entirely.
That's another topic entirely.
With you, but there is no law. There is nothing written on paper that can intervene when somebody wants to do something that goes against what is written on paper. It's irrelevant what the thing is written on paper. Words on a page cannot prevent you from doing anything you want to do.
Okay, so rights, as enshrined in the Constitution of the United States, are rights that have been granted to us citizens as a consequence of that document that we hold as the supreme law of the land. We have agreed, roughly speaking, for the most part, that we rather like this document, and we're going to stick to it for the most part, and therefore those are the rights that we get.
Right.
Okay, but those
are the ideas about how we're going to interact with each other that we agree on.
Sure, but those...
Or rather, how the government is going to interact with the citizenry, not even how the citizens are going to interact with each other. Because that's really what the Constitution is, right? It's how the government gets to react to us, and...
It's just what the government can't make us do.
Right.
Sort of. So if the government were to go away, all those rights would poof, they would be gone. Right?
Sure.
Okay.
And actually, I'll even go a step further. You don't even need the government to go away for those rights to be gone.
Okay, what do you need?
You need what's the word? Something government interest. There we go. You need a compelling government interest. So there are legal precedents for suspending Americans' rights, right? Very notable example is Japanese internment camps in the 1940s during World War II, right? So all you need to do is all the government needs to do, right, is convince a court. I'm not sure which one. I don't know if it's the Supreme Court.
I would assume in that case that if you need to convince a court, it would be that one, but maybe not.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what the process is, but I believe that the government argued. They didn't just summarily suspend the civil rights of Japanese Americans. They argued legally in a court of law, and the judge or judges agreed with them that there was a compelling government interest in suspending these rights for X period of time in the manner in which they did.
Okay, so we can have the rights.
So circumstance.
We can have the rights afforded
those
to us
rights
by
to
the
go
Constitution. The things that we hold so dear as American citizens, we can have those rights suspended, removed, twisted, thrown about, whatever, at any given time.
Right.
Roughly speaking. So do we have rights at all? No.
No, we don't.
Do we just flat out agree on that as a concept?
Okay, maybe there is violent agreement here. I don't think. I think we made them all up. Mm-hmm. I think we have collectively agreed to them tacitly, if not explicitly, over time. And I think that circumstance can cause them to be violated by each other, by ourselves, by whatever entities the contract of rights encompasses. Any number of those entities can at will violate those rights. Right. The only thing that makes those rights stable is their enforcement. That's it.
Okay, I don't.
So if you don't enforce them,
I don't agree to that part.
Always, then they're not really there.
I think that a component of making them stable is enforcement, but I think that the bigger, more important thing that keeps them stable is our agreement that we like them.
Sure.
So let's take an example, a hot button issue, the Second Amendment, okay, the right to bear arms. Lots of people, including myself, roughly speaking, don't care about that one anymore.
Fair enough.
Fuck it. I don't want you to have that right anymore, and I'm willing to give it up.
Okay.
So if enough of people like me continually agree that right should be, disbanded or dispensed with,
right?
Well, it's gone. Fuck off.
No, it's not.
Why not?
It's not gone. That's the whole point. That's actually that's the controversy right now, is that there are plenty of people in this country. I don't know if it's a majority, but certainly is a non-trivial minority. Like, if it is a minority, mathematically speaking, it's like, we're not talking like 3% or 5%. We're talking like double digits, 30,
let's call it
40,
roughly 50%.
Like
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Sure.
So the issue at hand, or what's so vexing for those individuals, is that despite the fact that they do not agree with this right and they want it to go away, it is still enshrined and it is still enforced.
Yeah, but
now, there are encroachments to its enforcement. There are lots of states that have passed laws that try to restrict it and whatever.
Sure.
But fundamentally, you are still entitled to that right as an American.
But
that hasn't stopped.
In a hypothetical situation where a sufficient number of Americans agree, there comes a time where that Bill of Rights gets amended and we repeal the right to bear arms, just like we've done for other things. So it's, it's one of those where, like, yes, it's enshrined, but it's only enshrined because enough of us still agree that we want it to continue to be enshrined.
I suppose so. I guess at a fundamental level, that's right. I mean, if are you accounting for the calculus of like political machinations and the slow movement of bureaucracy and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, roughly speaking, look, if you take the prohibition of alcohol as an example, we decided as a country that most of us agreed that we should not have any more alcohol, that alcohol should be illegal. which was a silly idea, but we did it. And then what, like 18 years later, or not even, like it was actually a fairly quick turn. We were like, fuck that noise. That was dumb.
Careful, because, oh, man.
Right?
No, I don't mean to say careful. I'm sorry.
Careful what?
That's confrontational. So I actually happen to be for the Second Amendment. So that
that's fine.
Maybe that's a disagreement for another podcast.
And that's fine. I'm not upset at you for being for the Second Amendment because I'm not really against it. I'm just annoyed and angry about the nonsense that it creates, and that we can't have a conversation about it in a reasonable manner. So I have taken the extreme position of fuck Second Amendment, gone. I don't want it.
All right.
I will vote against it.
Where I think you and I would agree, generally speaking, about the Second Amendment or about any right that gets violated or anything, is when you get right down to it, fuck stupid people, because that's the problem, right? With anything ever, it's stupid people, or assholes. But stupid people are assholes.
You have to make in order to make that statement, you have to make the assumption that you are not one of them.
Oh, well,
and
that's not hard.
and your belief that you are not one of them might be true. You can't really be sure.
Well,
but hold on.
You can't be sure, but identity, right? Identity, right? Who you are, right? Is not solely defined by you. Who you are is a negotiation between you and society. Now the ratio of input between what you think you are and what society thinks it is in creating the whole that is your identity, I don't know. 70-30, 80-20, who fucking knows? But I'm not the only one who thinks that I'm not an idiot or an asshole.
That's fine. I don't think you're an idiot.
All right, we got one data point in my court.
Right. The sample size is small right now.
Well,
I don't think I'm an idiot, but I might be. So look, everything that's coming out of our mouths is nonsense opinion. And we might like it, and we might agree with it, and we might think it sounds really good, but it's opinion. And so it's meaningless. So it only means anything up here or to each other as we're discussing it. Right? It doesn't account for any of the other, what are we at, 9 billion humans on the planet who have varying degree of it?
Seven.
No, we're higher than 7.
No, I think we're at 7.
We're
not at 8 yet. We're not at 8.
Use your fucking Google. You prepared.
See, there we go.
Prepared to cheat.
Thank you. This is a perfect.
You prepared
thing.
to cheat. Fucking cheat.
I'm really hoping we're less than 8. I think we're less than 8.
If we're less than 8, we're not much less than 8. We're on track for 9 here pretty soon.
Population. Let's do this.
But okay. While you look.
Oh, whoa, wow.
What are we at?
Fuck.
What are we at?
7.97.
Yeah.
So by Price is Right rules, I guess, which we're still in the 7s.
Oh, so
baby.
I lost because I went over. Is that what you're saying by Price is Right rules? Yeah. Fair enough.
So you think there's 8? There's 7.97. I mean, effectively, there's.
There's 8.
Okay,
there's
so 8 billion.
Yeah. So anyway, of the other 8 billion people, our sample size of our own opinions and how delightful they may be is a very small one. So I like to approach things with like, you can be reasonably certain about a topic, but you can't be certain about it sufficiently to say absolutely on most of these things. But I want to take it back because we've diverged. We've diverged. Surprise.
The beauty of these things, man. Organic movement.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. But it's important to remain on a topic. We can veer off the line, but we've got to stay on track.
All right, go for it.
No, because if you're on track, you're not veering because it's the track. I got to come up with a better one.
Dude.
Too much. So we both agree that rights fundamentally don't exist without a system. Right.
Well,
some system.
And a system of enforcement, right?
And
a system of enforcement.
And I'll add to that because that's true. But I'll add to that it's a system of belief and agreement because we have to believe in the system and we have to agree on the system because otherwise it's meaningless.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll grant you that. Sure. Yep.
What happens if there's no governmental entity that we all agree on? What happens to rights? Where do they come from? Do we still have them? Do they exist at all?
They're just
they're just gone.
there at that point, I would say then, because right, I think rights as an idea allow for an interesting sort of scalability. I agree with you that on any kind of scale greater than one, right? Or actually even a scale of one, if you think about yourself as a meta entity. But we'll get to that in a second.
Scale of
Hang
one.
On. Yeah.
Are we using
So
decibels
here's the
now?
thing.
I don't understand. Isn't it the same thing?
Here's the thing, right? We talked about the things that make rights real. You need a system of agreement. You need a system of enforcement, right?
Sure.
But at least I was thinking in my head, the example of a country or a group or of more people than one person, right?
Sure.
So if you lose the things that make a country, which is what that's your hypothetical, right? Country's gone. There's no more country.
Mm-hmm.
We are no longer a united collective. We are now just a bunch of floating individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Do rights still exist? Yes and no.
Tell me why yes.
Okay. Because you as a person can still believe that you have rights.
So I would like to believe that I have the right to burn to death every third person I see.
Okay. And here's the thing. Within the microcosm that is you, that's valid.
Is it?
Well, as long as you continue to agree with yourself and as long as you enforce that rule,
Yeah.
right? Well, people don't always agree with themselves on things. You're allowed to change your mind about how you feel about something from minute to minute if you want to. Also, it depends on how much you enforce it. So if you have the right to do that, okay, if you almost, I mean, I guess you don't always have to exercise your rights just because you have them.
No, careful. This is America.
Well, no, I mean, we're talking
I gotta
about
exercise my rights all the time.
There's
freedom.
nothing wrong with exercising your rights.
Freedom.
That's pretty gruff. I like that. So yeah, you as a person can still believe that you have rights.
So, but I guess what I'm getting at, though, in my example of that, I believe I have the right to burn to death every third person I encounter. So what sort of consequence does that have? Because now I am an individual, swimming in the soup of individuals now, the non-collective, non-agreeing individuals. And let's just say there's nothing about this soup of individuals that are ever going to agree. We refuse outright as 350 million individuals. We refuse outright collective agreement on anything.
Well,
let's just say.
Yes.
But let's say that's what's happening. This is a hypothetical. And so I can.
Okay, so this is hypothetical. Okay, so you're not all right. You're not saying that's actually true.
No. The whole thing is hypothetical because that's obviously not the case. But if the government dissolves and we lose all of our rights, your argument is that we all each have our individual beliefs that make our rights. So I came up with an absurd right. And I'm going to burn to death every third person I encounter. And everybody else in this soup of individuals is roughly similar, and they're going to come up with some other version. Now, it is likely that at some point I will encounter someone that believes they have the right to not be burned to death.
Yeah.
And both, in this example, both of us are perfectly valid in our assessments. I have a right to burn to death every third person, and that third person has the right not to be burned. What happens in that interaction between us without a bigger system to enforce something?
You attempt to kill each other. One you proactively attempt to kill that person, and then, or at the very least, that other person who desires not to be burned, whose rights or beliefs don't imply that they automatically kill you, does one of a couple of things. They either run away, they subdue you without your death, or they kill you, which also has the added benefit of subduing you. So those are
bonus.
Those are the right. If this person firmly believes that they have a right not to be burned to death, when you attempt to burn them to death, they are going to either run away or fight back. And in the fighting back, they will either break your arms and legs, preventing you from burning them,
specific.
Or they will kill you, which also prevents you from burning them.
Gonna bleed on me. So what does that look like, though? Because now we no longer have a society. We have a bunch of individuals operating on their own volition to do whatever they please. What does that look like in a greater scale? You're not the only person
in the world. You're not the only person in the world, even in your local surroundings, I would say, who shares the belief of I burn every third person.
I mean, there's going to be a
So-
few other people that come up with that, at least.
Right.
Yeah.
So what'll happen is we will naturally tend towards tribes. Small, controlled tribes whose total numbers are comprehensible to us from a practical social standpoint, where we can interact with these individuals and know their feelings, and be like when we were monkeys back in the fucking jungle, right? Like, society is the extended evolution of tribes getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There may well be a point where the tribe gets too big and the center cannot hold. That's possible.
Fair.
I don't know whether or not that is something we have reached here.
Do you think
There could well be
think,
systems that prevent that from occurring.
Do you think that there is a balancing point, and we occasionally exceed that balancing point, and we come back and we overshoot, and we go back the other way, and so we tribe for a while, then we big society, then we tribe for a while, then we big society, and we tribe for a while, and then maybe one day we hit some sort of balance point where we find the reasonable amount?
I think I agree with you. Yes, I think that's probably historically accurate. I think that when you have civilizations that have been too large, that have collapsed in the past, what has happened, right? They have fractured into smaller groups that are more cohesive, right? But I think that what the U.S. and I'm sure other constitutional either democracies or monarchies or whatever have attempted to create is a scaffolding that allows a superorganism that is much larger than any tribe normally would be without that scaffolding. So a series of rules and laws and systems that is essentially a compromise where you have, because right, what's the point behind federal and state and then local, right? State and then county, right? The idea is, as much as you can, keep things small. Fundamentally, that's the idea. Allow, where you can, small groups to make decisions. And then where those small groups need to interact with each other, then you go one level up to deal with the decisions at that higher level between how those groups interact. And then that's what states are, right? And then states need to interact with each other. So where states need to interact with each other, then you go one level up. But you try to keep things as low as you can to keep the groups as small as possible to maintain the maximum amount of collective cohesion.
Okay. So you're arguing...
Now, does it work perfectly?
Well, I mean, but you're arguing for the current form of government in the United States, is what you're saying.
Generally, well, the principle of government, I don't know if practically speaking we have adhered to that principle as well as we should have.
I think we've adhered to
generally
it too well,
speaking,
actually.
So you think that there should be more federal or more higher level decisions that get made that affect a larger group?
I think that there are certain things that require a higher level decision that affect multiple smaller groups versus smaller groups trying to make decisions for the larger population. Because what ends up happening, because okay, look, there's not a whole lot of difference between the two individuals that we came up with earlier. One wants to burn and the other one doesn't want to burn, right? There's not a lot of difference between that example and an amount of tribes, right? Because let's take the United States, 350 million people. We've taken 350 million individual tribes doing their own thing, and we've said, okay, look, too much. Let's do 1,000 tribes. Okay, let's get people into their burn or not burn agreeing tribes. Let's load them up.
How many counties are there?
I mean, big number, let's say. So if we're talking about tribes, right? So now, but hold on a second. Here's the other thing in tribes. Tribes don't travel across tribe lines. You stick to tribe. And occasionally you send out one or two people that aren't interested in burning each other
Scouts
to go check out the other tribe on a neutral zone, and then you kind of revert back to tribe. So if we're sticking with the concept of tribe,
there's a territoriality that's associated with that.
All we've done, in my view, with tribe is we've just kind of we've I can't even think of the word, but we've taken this individual soup and we've basically done the same thing. We've just reduced the overall number of opinions, right? Because we've grouped people, or they have grouped themselves, or we have grouped ourselves, whatever, right?
Well,
but
that's an important distinction. They have grouped themselves.
Yeah, they have grouped themselves. But so there's a danger in grouping yourself, because we've seen the danger of grouping. What happens when humans group themselves, or intend to group themselves and thereby group others, whether they like it or not. There's a negative consequence to that sort of behavior.
Yeah, but that's unavoidable. That's like natural. You have your group. I mean, there for any given person, right? There are two groups. There's the group that you're in, and then there's everybody else. So whatever group it is that you are currently identifying yourself as belonging to, whatever that group might be, whether it's a geographic location of community, whether it's something about ethnic or racial, or whatever the group is that I am part of X group, right? There's you, and then there's everybody else. That's how it always is.
So to go back to the tribe examples, because we've decided that tribes are fairly territorial, and they're not gonna cross territorial boundaries nearly as much as they would otherwise.
At least not historically, but no. I don't know if that's intrinsic to being a tribe.
I think it is, because
a tribe,
because the concept
nature has to.
Well, but the concept of a tribe is the thing that allows a tribe to be cohesive is usually fear. Yes, initially it's an agreement of some kind, but it's fear. Because the reason why you insulate your tribe is because you're afraid of the other tribe. But let's say for argument's sake, because let's go back to the bigger form of government now, right? Whether or not the higher tier should be making decisions for smaller groups. Let's say you're a tribe and you're kind of surrounded by a group of tribes that you've interacted with enough that we generally agree sufficiently that the thing I'm going to do over here shouldn't really impact you negatively, because, it's easier to do that than it is to always be at war with one another, right? So we're going to agree on some form of peace, okay? And now we've got this tribe that's sort of in the middle and now insulated from all of the other tribes that's now going to do a thing that may not impact the tribes right next door, but could have an impact on a tribe, hypothetically, farther away, separated by multiple tribes. Okay. I mean, a modern example is a fucking tire fire, right? I light a fucking tire fire. The prevailing winds fucking lift it up over the tribes next to me. And then fucking, because of the way the jet stream works, it drops it on tribes thousands of miles away. This is happening constantly. It's happening right now. But the idea being,
I didn't know that was a thing.
Well, I used the word tire fire, but any other thing that we set into the atmosphere, of course it is. Yeah. There are days where wildfires in California are impacting the Northeast just because of weather patterns. I mean, no one picked for it to impact the Northeast, but it's going to do it. Radiation from Chernobyl. Where did that go? It went all over the place. But
yeah, but it doesn't. I agree with you, but it doesn't skip. Like radiation from Chernobyl doesn't skip Pripyat and then go to like St. Petersburg.
It just so radiation in and of itself, no. But let's say we've got a column of hot gases that are rising, 20,000 feet into the atmosphere. The person next to the fucking column isn't noticing that there's shit smoke in the air because it's way up there until it travels far enough and then starts to settle back down. But the point I'm trying to make is you're a tribe in the middle, insulated by your fairly peaceful neighbors, and what you're doing is now impacting a tribe farther off. Okay? So in that scenario, in that hypothetical scenario, which is funny enough, not terribly hypothetical, what is the consequence now of my actions impacting that tribe farther away, and vice versa, without some larger entity that we can participate in as a set of tribes?
Conflict. The answer is conflict.
Right.
At every level, right? At every iteration of the hypothesis that you're putting forward, right? If it's a bunch of individuals in a soup with different rights, conflict. If it's tribes in a soup of tribes that they disagree, conflict. Right. Yeah.
So if it's states in an ununited fashion, it's conflict.
Yeah.
If it's countries in an ununited fashion, it's conflict.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm advocating for in this hypothetical discussion of fantastical things is that the closer we get to the largest agreement, whether natural or not, the less conflict we will have.
Sure.
But
that that's extremely difficult
Fine.
because
So is
if
turning off gravity.
if for no other reason than random mutations,
Okay.
random like we don't understand where our thoughts come from or how we get them, but part of the calculus of human minds is an element of randomness, at least thus far, right? Our brains, to our knowledge, are not completely deterministic. So there is a random element to our brains, which means that random ideas can enter.
Sure.
And in fact, there's a lot of studies that suggest that that ideas are like viruses, right? Memes, genes, that ideas have people. People don't have ideas. So you can have a idea whose genesis is in a single person in an otherwise homogeneous world, right? Everybody on planet Earth, all 9 billion of us, right? All think the same thought. And then somebody is born and through, this is going to sound weird, but like it's through no fault of their own, they have a random thought that is different from the collective. And that thought is compelling for whatever reason. And it starts to take hold, like a spark that creates a wildfire.
I mean, let's do this. Like a Hitler.
Yeah.
Do we generally agree as a society, Hitler bad or Hitler good?
Depends on
what
time in society.
Generally,
Are you talking about now?
Even then.
Because back then in Hitler's time, there was a lot of people who agreed.
Yeah, but generally as a society, as a group of humans.
There is no generally as a society.
No, there certainly is.
You have to specify. No, because morality is relative.
No, forget.
Go back far enough and people were having sex with kids.
Go back far enough. What do you mean go back far enough?
You know what I mean? Like it was commonly acceptable for like people to have sex with young boys or whatever. Like slavery was a perfectly fine thing back in the day. Like there was no. It was the status quo.
You're missing the point.
All right.
Morality notwithstanding. Okay, whatever that is. The idea that somebody like Hitler was generally agreed with or not is the question. Because it doesn't matter what was right or wrong. It's the question of whether or not the world, as it existed then and now, generally agreed with Hitler or not. And I'm arguing very simply that no, they did not agree with Hitler because no,
I would disagree.
Lots of people did, but enough people didn't.
When you say agree, like
I'm being very general in my statement because we could
they thought that killing is bad. They thought that killing Jews is bad. Like, what do you? What
they
is
thought
the thing
that trying
that the world
to they thought that trying to overthrow varying neighboring countries to rule the world was bad. They thought that a genocide of a people was bad.
Yeah, they thought that the mass killing when it came onto their doorstep. Like the only reason America got involved in the war was because of the Japanese.
The only
they could have exterminated all the Jews they wanted to in Europe, and as long as they kept it in Europe and nobody tried to mess with our borders,
the only reason
would have done a thing.
The only reason America got involved with the war when we did is because of the Japanese. The truth of the matter is that we were on track to get involved in the war regardless, and in fact, we were involved in the war. We were just playing a supporting role, sending supplies and weapons to the British such that they could fight the Nazis and whatever. However you want to.
So when you say agree, right? That's a very
however you want to line out the geopolitical reasoning behind involvement in global conflict is a separate story. As a broad brush of cultural agreement, the world has generally agreed that Hitler is a bad thing. I mean,
I'm sorry.
You're telling me that the majority of human civilization thinks Hitler was good?
The concept behind Hitler, which is picking a group and murdering them and blaming them for all your problems,
happens nonstop.
Is completely human. It is a thing that we do all the time, everywhere, in microcosms and macro scale.
Yeah.
So to say that we don't agree with it, what, on paper? When someone asks us, when we're in the safety of our own home in a nice cushy place? Because when push comes to shove, people have a way of going from, oh, I don't think we should do that, to kill those motherfuckers.
Yeah. Well, which, by the way, hold on a second, because I don't think I'm making my point clear enough, but what you've just described, I believe, is tribalism. Because the moment that you live in conflict with a neighboring group, right, your decision is to either engage in that conflict or create peace through agreements. And if you can't create peace through agreements, or whatever the reasoning is, and you want to have conflict, the best way to end conflict is to completely obliterate your neighbor.
I'm going to go one step further and say you don't even need to have a beef with your neighbor to generate conflict with them. You need to have, I will grant you that you fundamentally need to have a beef, but you can have a beef with yourself. Resentment can lead to conflict.
Sure. I mean,
you can hate your own life and your own situation
literally, that was
so
Hitler's
much,
deal, frankly.
Right? Like, it's not like the Jews were actually a problem for the Germans or anybody else.
He used them as a scapegoat.
Like, we don't like our lot in life because of World War I and other shit. So you know what? Fuck you.
Right.
Like, they just picked somebody and said, it's their fault.
Let's go back to the simplicity of the question. Do you think the majority of the world, societally, socially, culturally, believes that Hitler is good? I've asked the question in a way that the answer you can give really only can be one answer, and that is no.
But see, no, but I can't, because the problem is that the terms are ill-defined.
Give me the terms,
right?
Then. Ask the question in a different way.
When you say Hitler,
I mean Adolf Hitler of Nazi Germany.
The person or what he did?
The person, guy. The person. The human being who perpetrated.
So divorced from the genocide?
I don't No, not divorced from the genocide.
The point I'm trying to make to counter your point,
okay,
right?
I don't think
is that people are not what they think. People are what they do. So when you say, does the world agree, right? I don't give a fuck what little thoughts you have in your head. Those are irrelevant. They mean nothing.
Well, okay, that goes back to my original point of two guys with opinions.
How you behave.
Yeah. But you can't. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but unfortunately, we have no other method of communicating without these opinions and thoughts, regardless of how meaningless they are.
Sure, we do. Act.
Well, okay.
Your observation of other people's actions is a means of communication.
You're right. It is a means of communication, but the primary means of communication, like for instance, let's use this for instance, we are recording this thing for people to watch and listen to. None of the people that watch and listen to us, save for maybe a couple people that we might know, have any idea what our actual actions are. And the only thing they have to judge us on is our nonsense opinions.
Even our nonsense opinions in this form have associated actions. They're not played out in the world, but
they might have associated actions, but nobody can see them.
Body language and facial expressions, right? Most of our communication is nonverbal. Most of our communication.
What about the people listening and not watching? What about the people listening and not watching?
They have even less of an ability to make a determination about.
And so in this format of audio only,
yes, it's diluted.
But it's not even diluted. It is a method of communication. You're absolutely right. There are many facets to communication, and when you assemble them all together, they are much more complicated than just a few words out of opinions. But for the purposes of this argument, we have to separate ourselves.
They're much more reliable, though. It's not just that they're much more complicated. They're much more the higher the fidelity of communication. Like if we're in person versus over Skype, versus over the phone versus text, right? As you reduce the fidelity of the communication, right, you are less certain of the truth of what is being said. Okay, which is why it's important to look someone in the eye when they're talking to you. Why does that matter?
As I look off.
Right? Your body language is literally like so granted, neither of us is acting out what we're saying in the world, but even now, this communication is not devoid of physical intent.
No, but what about when we create our hypothetical situations, or when we imagine things that are not real, and we have thoughts and ideas that are really just thoughts and ideas, and we wish to express them? Those are not backed up by any sort of action at all, because if they were, then
Give me an example.
I'll give you an example. I just saw a baby deer run across the hillside, and I thought, man, wouldn't it be neat to take a bite out of that baby deer's neck right now?
Okay.
That's not a fucking thing I'm going to do for so many reasons, but it's still a thought I can have, and it's still words I can say, and it has nothing to do with anything in reality, because it is simply an expression of an idea.
Actually, again, maybe I'm being too nitpicky.
I think you're being too nitpicky.
Well, no, the devil's in the details.
No,
right?
it's not.
Actually,
okay, no, actually, you know what? I take that back. Think about what you said. The devil is in the details. Fucking ditch the devil. Fuck the devil.
No.
Yes. Nah.
While you're not going to run outside and bite the deer. This is a hilarious image. This is what the conversation has devolved into.
Seriously.
So you're not going to bite the deer.
Not.
Granted.
I'm not.
But it does belie a somewhat carnivorous intent that you have, and you do eat meat. If you had that that thought does exist in the realm of thoughts of Mark likes meat. And
okay.
Mark does eat meat in the real world.
Sure. What does me burning every third person say about me then? I mean, because really now exactly, right? It's does every thought and every idea that everybody has indicate something else about themselves that is to be worried about?
Probably.
No, of course not.
Well, not worried about, but it certainly does indicate something like your thoughts come from or are colored by you. If they don't come from you, they certainly go through the filter of you before they are expressed in the world.
Sure.
And to that end, when they pass through that filter, they take some of that filter with them, so you can learn about yourself by your thoughts.
How would you pose the question?
Okay.
Regarding Adolf Hitler of Nazi Germany, as to whether or not society generally agrees or disagrees with his actions?
I know what you're trying to do.
Because I can literally hear our audience knocking on their fucking monitors going, "Guy, just say Hitler bad." I can hear them doing it, and it doesn't.
Yeah, but see, here's you're right. And just say Hitler bad. Sure. But here's the problem, audience who's knocking, right?
There's nobody listening.
In your own lives, when you act, and maybe there's never been a circumstance where you've had to act this way, but in your own lives, when push comes to shove, right? Let's see how well you avoid killing the Jews in your own life. All right.
You're gonna have to lay a foundation for something like that.
It's a metaphor.
Yes.
All right. The basis for Hitler's evil is something that exists in all of us and is acted out by all of us to varying degrees.
I agree, but hold on a second.
We are all resentful. We are all petty.
I'm going to fix this for you. I'm going to fix this for you. Because I get what you're saying. Every last one of us has got a little teeny tiny baby Adolf Hitler inside of us. Dig it. Yes, because that's a human trait. Okay? But very few of us have acted upon the desire for genocide.
Fair enough.
Okay.
We've never enacted genocide.
I mean, there's only we can do maybe a half dozen or a dozen humans in history have gone. I'm going to take my
who've run with it.
I'm going to take my petty bullshit.
We're really motivated. We're I'm going to run with this.
Yeah. I've decided that my petty bullshit equals genocide. Yeah, for the most part, though, we haven't.
There are lots of people out there whose resentment has caused them to beat their spouses.
Okay,
abuse their children.
Do you recognize the difference between rationale and evidence, or not evidence, but practicality? Yes, you're absolutely right. Perhaps the same traits exist in such a manner that and I agree with this as a concept, that they can manifest themselves in many ways that are potentially negative, whether that negative interacts with only yourself or with one other person or 1,000 or 1,000,000 or whatever. But there is in fact a difference between beating your wife and trying to kill all the Jews.
The difference, as far as I'm concerned, is just a matter of scale.
Okay.
That's it. It's a matter of scale. It's rooted in the same vile shit that we all have, right?
Would you go to war? Would you go to war to stop one man from beating his wife?
No.
Would you go to war to stop every man from beating every wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Scale matters.
Scale matters.
Scale matters. I grant you. Scale matters.
Scale matters. So
it does.
I don't even. Okay. I would like to say that the question that I am posing is not going to be answered in the way that I want it to be answered.
Well, hang on. I will, for the sake of argument, I will acquiesce. I think we both understand each other's points. Yeah. Hitler is bad. I grant you that.
Hitler bad.
Oh, seriously.
Okay. Cool. Do you remember why I asked that question in the first place?
I think it had to do with rights, and it had to do with tribalism and how we understand what is like acceptable thoughts and not acceptable thoughts in a society.
Oh, right. It was the idea of externalizing those thoughts and how they impact the greater world, whatever that is. Right.
Right.
Okay. I could quite this on this episode of the Ayoub podcast. Phil and I discuss rights. Apparently. So okay, let's take it back. Let's take it all the way back to the beginning. We both agree that rights don't exist without a system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Whatever that system looks like. What do you got?
Hang on, just to clarify. Yes. I think we are in agreement, but just to be clear. They can exist within the individual minds of people who have them, okay, but they are not practically useful.
Okay,
without a mechanism. Yeah.
Very good, very well put. We can argue that the individual mind is a system, but it's not a very good system for doing anything useful with on the outside, for the most part. So, because if I'm
by ourselves, we run into a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
If we're only ever always by ourselves,
if I'm Billy Burnham, then I'm just going to go run around burning people. It's not very useful for the greater.
You're going to run into a lot of conflict.
It's going to be a lot of problems. Might be neat at first.
Possibly fatal.
Could be neat at first. Probably going to be an issue later on.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So rights require a form of a system because neither of us believe, regardless of how we decide that they arrive, neither of us believe in a set of rights handed down to us from a power that exists beyond ourselves.
Yeah, no, we came up with
them.
They're self-serving.
Yeah, totally. They're totally self-serving.
Yeah.
So I guess then my question, my as it relates to rights, based upon what we've just discussed, is: do the rights we have, or rather, are the rights we have good? Are they and us, meaning American citizens, as it pertains to our Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Are they good? Are they useful? Do we like them all? Should we get rid of some, and should we add any more? Because if they're not fucking sprinkled from the sky from shit we can't see, and we have all agreed upon them and they're ours.
Well, the only rights that anyone claims, at least anyone in the U.S. claims to have been sprinkled from the sky, are the first three, right? That are not
the First Amendment, the Second. No, see, but those aren't even rights.
Well,
they're not.
They're implicit.
But they're not. There's no court. There's no court that upholds any of those three things that you've mentioned as rights. They do not exist for us. We like them.
No. They are not. They are not practically ensconced, but they absolutely exist, right? Because remember, you can have a right. You can even have collective agreement on a right, but if it's not directly ensconced or whatever, it's not practically enforceable. So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are sprinkled from the sky. Okay? All the other rights in the Constitution, no one has ever pretended were sprinkled from the sky. They all came from us, collectively sitting in some very hot rooms in Pennsylvania, Apparently,
Have you?
I don't know why I remember that fact. Like,
Have you been to that room, by the way?
Congress.
Have you?
No, I haven't.
Oh, if you ever go to Constitution Hall and all the other historical sites in Pennsylvania, it's actually quite neat to go see that, because they're fucking hot rooms, dude. They're not a comfortable place.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's wooden chairs with tall ceilings with small windows, and it sucks.
No fans.
No
nothing,
fans.
No AC.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Oof.
Everybody stunk. They were all wearing wool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big, hot, sweaty room with a bunch of hot, sweaty
That's
guys.
all.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
ugh.
That's
Okay.
and America.
Okay. So the Constitution, and we could talk about those rights however much you want. Not sprinkled from the sky.
Although I would argue that many Americans believe that the Second Amendment is directly a result
Many
of
Americans
Jesus.
believe in angels and ghosts.
It's
too.
Jesus and guns and babies. If it wasn't for Jesus, we wouldn't have guns or babies.
Come on, man.
Well,
Give people a little bit more credit.
you want now we're talking about me giving people credit.
Well, because here's the thing, right? I think what you are representing, which does exist, is just a very vocal minority.
I agree.
I don't think that most of the people that are stereotyped into that pocket,
right.
which we'll generally call conservative or right wing or whatever you want to call it, right?
Anymore,
like
know.
it's not.
No.
It's not. Like even people who live in like a lot of them are not that.
No.
They're not like Jesus and guns and like you can have like it's like what
a lot of
Men in
them,
Black, right? Like an individual is smart. People are dumb, panicky, stupid animals.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you talk to folks in those parts of the country that generally enshrine conservative values, they're still not that extreme of like bucktooth hayseed fucking cousin.
But let's put it this.
right?
I'll put it this way, because for some reason you're defending this group of humans, and that's fine.
Well, you have to.
Well, no.
If we're talking about keeping the tribe, the giant tribe that is America, cohesive and cooperating towards reaching a compromise that we can all live with, right? The idea about alienating one side or the other doesn't do us any favors.
You're absolutely right. Practically speaking, you're absolutely right. Morally speaking, even, you're absolutely right. I agree with you as a concept.
Does it feel good to shit on people you disagree with? Yes,
how else am I supposed to know my self-worth
Absolutely.
unless I crush those around me?
Sure.
I mean, if I can't stand atop the bones of thousands of people as I give my speech, then how am I supposed to know how important I am? The fuck was my point?
Do you know what's best?
What?
Do you know what's best in life?
What's that?
To crush your enemies. To see them driven before you. To hear the lamentations of their women. Okay. You never watched Conan the Barbarian?
No.
Sorry.
I went outside instead.
You gave me a very poetic image of you on a mountain of bones.
Well, but that's I've joked about that, about standing atop the bones of those I've crushed as I give my grand speeches and bite the neck of deers. The necks of deer? The necks of deer. It's like attorneys general. So right, you've got some kind of crazy background noise happening right now.
I don't hear anything.
Fascinating. Anyway, so rights come from a system that we have to agree upon. But okay, where we were going, and I think where we should try to wrap up this point is that this concept of the rights sprinkled down from above, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They sound nice. There's nothing. These are not laws. These are not rights. There's no court that will uphold the right to liberty or happiness, period. Does not exist in this country. It might could, but it does not currently. Which goes back to this concept of that rights that we have, that we hold so dear. Because I mean, and why I was, doing the Second Amendment bit was we as a country, whether it's the first, the second, the third, nobody cares about the Fourth Amendment or the Fifth or the Sixth, quite frankly, if anybody even knows what the Second Amendment is actually saying. But that's beside the point.
unreasonable
search and seizure. Yeah.
Right?
So and quite, you ask anybody about the Fourth Amendment, they're like, I don't fucking know. Here, take my phone. I don't know. But these rights that we have, especially the first and the second, because those are the ones that we have politicized and identified with the most. We hold them so dear, we forget, I think, that they are our creation and they exist purely because we agree with each other enough about them.
They're literally called amendments. The very definition of the word means can be changed.
The Constitution is not a living document. It cannot be edited in any form because it was written by God.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. I'm comfortable letting the world know about that, and shouting that from the rooftops because it doesn't change my opinion about the amendments that are in it. I agree that a society should have the flexibility to change, and there may come a day when the Second Amendment and maybe other amendments in the list of 26?
I believe we're currently at 26. Yeah,
need to be either removed or amended or changed or whatever it might be. But we're not there yet. Or at least for the big one, the big hot button one, number 2, right? I don't see a compelling reason to change that one.
So okay, let's do this.
You want to make part 2 about that?
Yeah, but I don't want to keep talking.
Oh.
Well, I want to piss and do some stuff. So how about, and I'll edit this bit out, but
no, leave the piss mark in there.
Oh, it's not even so much about the piss. It's just because there was a good segue, and so let's do this. Let's make part 2 about the Second Amendment.
Okay.
Because I agree with you, but I disagree with you.
Awesome.
On the next episode of the Ayoub podcast.